Well, Rob, welcome back, man. How you doing?
Good, good, good. How are you?
I'm doing great. We are primed for a new Rob Rage post at some point based on a recent university visit. But we're gonna bring all that enthusiasm into the bread and butter of Rob Snyder. Like this is today we're getting deep into pull the the Substack is titled "The Pull Framework: Refined, Developing Your Intuition for Pull." I'm actually Rob. I'm not going to let you talk in this one. I'm gonna jump straight into a paragraph that I thought was awesome. You said even sales calls should be designed around pull is the little subhead for this section, and I just want to start with this because I suspect that our listener is going to feel some amount of identification with it. I definitely did. You wrote, I have found that most sales calls are wandering dumpster fires. We ask a set of questions following some sales framework, not quite knowing exactly what we're looking for. The potential customer spits out a demand hairball, which is confusing and disorienting to us. So we just say, well, thanks for that. Here's our product. Do you want to buy it? And proceed to drag them through an awful presentation and never-ending demo. I think you've probably you've watched hundreds of videos, you've worked with dozens and dozens of founders. You're probably uniquely positioned to write that specific paragraph about the current state of like B2B sales. Rob, let's just start with like what's going on. Why are we're going to revisit some really important frameworks related to pull. What's going on with you that's top of mind?
Yeah, so I've gotten a lot of people who have read the original poll blog post. And when I looked back at it, I was like, okay, cool. It was like, I feel like it was like 40 words in total and like wasn't super deep in it. And I feel like it's also evolved a bit since then as I've tried to articulate it and tried to better understand it. That pull is a concept that like I created, but also I'm just kind of finding, right? It's not something that like comes out of thin air. It's trying to describe. And so as I've been hitting my own head against the wall with pull and like realizing all the different places that it applies in, it's like, okay, it's time to try to rewrite that post in a way that if you read it, you should come out the other side with an intuition for like, okay, what actually is this thing? Where do I see it and where does it apply in my world?
Yeah. And today we will try to make this as practical and as tangible as possible with our experiences. I would say before jumping in deeper, pull this post up to our listener. Like this one is worth like we're gonna talk about concepts. For me, it was super helpful to actually like read them. Rob incorporates more diagrams into this. The visuals I found very like helpful. It's kind of like the dream team of your like all of your demand work for like the last 18 months or 24 months or something.
Yeah, I feel like I got all the infinity stones and I'm just like,
I love it. Maybe before we jump into the specific content, who is this? I actually think
everyone, this
I
is
think
for
it's kind of for everyone.
this is
Yeah.
for, yeah, like, so I've been watching sales calls from startups that are like companies that could no longer be called startups because they're in the tens, 20s, 50s millions in revenue. And it's like, they don't know what they're doing in the calls. They don't know what's happening in the calls. Yeah, even at that stage, people are buying despite what happens in the sales calls. And it's just, there's no grounding. And so if you are a sales rep, if you're a founding AE, you need to understand pull. If you are the 400th sales rep at Oracle or whatever right now, like you need to understand this because this gets to the root of why are people buying things. If you are an engineer building, never talking to customers, which I think you should still talk to customers, you have to have an intuition for what are people trying to accomplish and
Mm,
how, in what ways are they blocked so you can build something that makes sense. You're never going to understand this from just a requirement stock as an engineer. Like, it's just never going to make sense. And you're going to make a million, like in all of our roles, we make a million decisions in a given week. Unless you have some sort of a ground theory on what customers are trying to do, how they are blocked, and where you fit in that world, you're going to make most of those decisions by some arbitrary standard, and they're going to not fit what customers need by default. We need this at the foundation.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Like if anybody or the folks that are farther removed from the customer are at greatest risk of taking a supply centric view of what they're doing, because that's where their their world is, and that's what if you're not close to demand, that's a super interesting point, Rob. We're gonna uh, any other thoughts before we jump into some of the concepts here?
No, but I think like, can I just read through the way I describe pulled now, like the literal words in the framework?
Yeah, let's hit
Okay.
it. Do you want me to pull that up, or do you got it?
I got it. And so the pull framework articulates four characteristics that, if these characteristics are all true and you offer something that fits, a customer will rip the product out of your hands. They will pull the product from you. You will not have to push. Those four characteristics are: the customer has to be prioritizing a specific project on their to-do list. There needs to be a reason why they are prioritizing that specific project out of all of the possible projects they could possibly prioritize. As they prioritize that project, they look into a list of options. Maybe it's just one, or maybe it's multiple. Maybe it's do it themselves, whatever. But that option doesn't fit. There are limitations that prevent them from accomplishing the project they have on their to-do list in the way they want to. They are blocked. And so we'll get into the components of this, but I wanted to start there because I need to articulate it in my own words. I find whenever I write it down, some of the meaning gets lost.
Yeah. I and just to hit those, like the four elements, and pull framework titled in part because it's an acronym, in part because just creative genius by Rob. Like, just
No,
nailed it.
the funny thing is that the origin of this was my friend Gorik, who's an author. He, a week before the book was due, he was like, "Hey, I think you should have an acronym for pull in there." And I was like, "You're so right, you idiot!" And then I had to rewrite the whole book in 5 days.
It's incredible. Well, shout out to Gorik. I think about the acronym frequently, and I use. We'll talk about specific calls here. I'm literally just like going through in my brain the four elements,
Yes.
like checking them off. Basically, like, do I understand their project? If not, keep pushing on that.
Yes.
And but it's basically again, to hit them one more time. There's a project on a potential customer's to-do list. There is a reason the project is urgent or unavoidable. Interesting that urgent's made its way in there. Unavoidable, I think, was a little bit of the OG. And then they consider a list of options, list being the L there, a list of options for accomplishing the project, but the options they consider have severe limitations. And we'll talk about all of those. But Rob, let's making this super practical. I just mentioned how I use this. How do you tell founders to use this, like the pull framework, in calls themselves?
Yeah, so there's a couple different angles on the pull framework, which we'll get into. The pull framework is upstream of your ideal client profile, your ideal customer profile. So whoever has pull is who you should focus on having calls with. In calls, you, like, the first part of a sales call, which is called discovery, which is mostly a colonoscopy at this stage for the poor potential customer that they weren't ready for.
Let's figure out how many. So we started with, I think, dumpster fire. Now we're at colonoscopy. Let's find as many painful ways to describe the current state of sales calls as we can.
Yeah. Well, I've also used waterboarding. Like, they just like
Yeah.
But like the point of the discovery part of a sales call is to fill out the pull framework, their pull framework. What are you trying to accomplish? Why this versus all the other things you could accomplish? What are you looking into? What have you looked into? What have you tried? And why isn't that good enough? That's it. And only once you have those components can you then articulate what you're doing in a way that makes sense to them.
Yeah. 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 Love it. And so it's um do you find that founders actually like are
Yes.
filling out a physical yeah.
I've actually, so I've seen a founder who pulls up, screen shares a Google Doc that says, the project you're prioritizing is blank. The reason this versus all others, and fills it
Fascinating.
out live. I don't know that that's a good idea necessarily,
And
but
do you know how did you watch some of those
yeah,
calls?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
how
It's
is
the
the
customers are like, potential customers are like, cool, yeah. I mean, like they just kind of go along with it. I don't know, like I haven't watched enough of them to know if it's a good idea or not.
yeah.
But I do know that like it creates a element of collaboration there and says, hey,
Yeah.
you and I are working on this. I need to understand your context to know what to show you.
Yeah, that is super interesting. I mean, that I've felt some discomfort in calls recently. Like for example, yesterday we're gonna talk about the colonoscopy I gave yesterday, which like I felt like I was pushing on like I was trying to understand these dimensions. And the customer, this was with a national tourism board in Latin America, and the customer was eh, they did not have pull. That became obvious. I was still trying to understand what what their projects were, what they were prioritizing to figure out where in the ecosystem I fit. Basically, it turns out like they outsource a lot of these decisions to agencies, which is where I need to go. But I was having a really, really hard time getting the information out of
Mm,
them. I've had people straight up tell me like, I'm not going to tell you what my priorities are. That like they're just like that defensive. I don't
yeah.
know. How do you? So the Google Doc like triggers this like light bulb that's like, okay, there must be other tactics to help
Yeah.
get some of this information out and open up customers.
Yeah, yeah. So what I tend to do is say, hey, why did you take the call? What are you hoping to get out of it? Ideally, we get something useful out of that.
Yeah.
And if they're like, oh, well, you just reach out to me. It's like, yeah, I know that. I know you also probably get a bunch of other messages that you don't,
Yeah.
follow up on. Why this one? What about this was interesting or relevant to you? Right. And
Yeah.
so you're trying to get something there. If not, then you say, okay, cool. Like, as it relates to this kind of general space, what are you focused on right now? What are your priorities? What's on your mind? And if they still give you the middle finger there, then what you do is you say, cool, all right, you're useless. Let me pull up a slide of what I've heard other people say that they are
Yeah.
prioritizing. Do any of these projects fit what you are trying to do? And if they're still like, listen, I just want to see the product.
Yeah.
Like, just say, okay, cool. You're not serious, and either I can end the call here. Like that's one option, right? If
Yeah.
they're just like not gonna give you any context, it's not worth your time on a call.
Yeah.
Or you can just YOLO a demo and say, hey, cool. Here's what we do. I don't know if this is relevant. I think you're kind of wasting my time. You tell me at any one point in time here. Otherwise, we'll just end the call and say, hey, nice knowing you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I love I love it when you're like the YOLO a demo tactic. That's one of my favorite things that you recommend. Um, yeah, I've and on the point of threatening to end the call, I've done that a couple times, and I don't know why, but it triggers a very fast change in the
Yeah.
demeanor of the person on the other side. I don't know if it's like they become aware of how unhelpful they are, or that it's like I don't know I don't know why that works.
I think most people view salespeople as people to be run over and told what to do. And
Yeah.
so if they perceive that you're a salesperson, they'll just like default treat you back. What would be funny is if you just come in with that energy, I'm about to hang up the call unless you just
Yeah.
preempt it. We're like, whoa. I don't
Yeah. It's amazing. Let's just cut to the chase. I know what you're gonna say to me. Like, but gonna pull out my aces up the sleeve real quick. All right, hey, let's get into some of this. I want to make sure, like, there's so many important concepts. We're not going to be able to go as deep as we should for all of them, but I want to hit as many of them as we can. We've just introed the pull concept. We're going to get into the base assumption, which is people don't care about us. I don't know who needs to hear that, but
I think
but it's
that's
true.
super important. It's a very important starting point. You have to
Let's
have some sort of a default assumption about other people
yeah,
and like about why do people buy products? Why do people do things? You have to get to some level of ground truth here. And
yeah.
if we're honest with ourselves, most of us think that, or I'll just speak about myself, and if listeners can decide if they agree with this or not.
Listener.
Listener can. Um, uh, my default operating model is like what I'm building is awesome, and everyone
Yeah,
should want it. And so I need that to be just like punched out of me, repeat
yeah,
like constantly. And so the default assumption here is that nobody cares about us. They don't
yeah,
care about our product. They don't care. They care about themselves. They have a to-do list. They have things they are trying to accomplish. And we are only relevant to them if we help them accomplish what they are trying to accomplish. Anything outside of that, they would be crazy to care about us.
yeah, yeah. The I I think you hit like the nail on the head there with like you spend all your time thinking about your product, about your, and they spend none of not like zero
Yes.
of their time thinking about you. And their life was like, hopefully they've got a project that you can help solve and that you're well placed for, but their life was fine without you before and it's going to be fine without you after. And like the greatest likelihood if you haven't found pull yet is that you are a blip that will be forgotten within 6 hours,
Yes.
basically.
Their
Um,
default state, by default, they care about what's on their own to-do list. And by default, they are totally indifferent to us.
yeah,
You have to just start there. Because if you start anywhere other from there, you're going to engage in all this sort of wishful thinking and wind up doing moralizing sales calls. The reason we started this company is because we believe that all people should da da. And it's just like, what the hell
yeah.
is going on here?
Any outreach I feel, or most outreach that starts with the word I or we, like we built XYZ product, like I am trying to do X. I'm just thinking about my inbox in Outlook and just how many it's just like spam, spam, spam. Like it's all, instead of outward, project focused, service oriented, like trying to serve the customer, it's here's the thing that I'm trying to do. And it's like, do not care. Don't
Dude,
have time to try to figure this out. It's probably irrelevant and you're not focused on me anyways.
yeah.
Um, um, all right, we're gonna hit what pull is. We're gonna hit what pull is not, which is super important. Like those reminders to me are super helpful every time. We're gonna talk about what causes pull, who has pull. You mentioned the ICP. We're gonna get deeper into that, and I thought your definition
Mm,
in this post was really good on that. It helped me understand it better. And then along the way, and maybe at the end, we'll be able to hit it. A couple um, things related to your specific pull. So we'll open up pull back the curtain on Rob's business. All right. So let's talk about what is pull, starting with pull as blocked demand, which I think is a really good way of describing it. Let me, Rob, if it's okay with you, I'm going to read a little bit from your blog. An easy place to build your intuition for pull is by combining P and U, which is a project on your to-do list that's urgent or unavoidable. So take the P and U and combine it with the L and L, which is, there's a list of options they're considering that are lacking in some way. There's a person who is applying force against their status quo, which is the P and U, but their existing options aren't good enough, which is the L and L. Note that P and U are demand, while L and L are supply options that are blocking demand. Pull is a state of blocked demand. really cool. Like very well like combined. I loved that like the combination of concepts there. What more would you add here?
Yeah, okay, so it like think of it in terms of forces, right? Like we're in the physics realm. There's they are applying force, trying to accomplish this specific project, but their existing options are pushing back in favor of the status quo. They are not good enough. And so you can see that as kind of like two forces battling each other, where the existing options are just pushing against what they are trying to accomplish. And in that state, you can see there's energy there that's potential energy that can be unblocked. And so that's what's happening in my head. That's what I'm looking for. Is where are people trying to accomplish something but blocked from what they really want to accomplish? They could, they still could implement something that's not quite a fit, but there's still this kind of sense of misfit. There's this sense of they're still fighting.
Yeah. What is that? Can you think of a an example where you like that? I love the idea of potential energy, like just like applying like some of these physics concepts to it or engineering or whatever. Um, what does it look like when there is strong potential energy in the form of demand?
Yeah, so it's you can kind of tell when somebody is struggling in the moment. So like in Jump's case, right? Like uh Jump does automating meeting notes for financial advisors. Like before Jump, financial advisors would take 45 minutes of notes before and after client meetings. Now, you look at that from the outside and you can't really tell if there's a ton of potential energy. That's just what they do, right? But it turns out that there was a lot of potential energy there because that time, those 45 minutes, they could spend at home or golfing. And so every time they're in that situation where they're taking meeting notes, right? There's this project that is blocked on their to-do list, which is like automate this, get this off of my plate, right?
Yeah.
Such that when Jump showed up, and this is the critical thing, you often can't really see it until you offer something. You put something in front of them that unblocks them or would unblock them. So what happens is when Jump shows up and says, hey, what if you didn't do that? People rip the product out of their hands and they grow super fast. But like there's another scenario in which they didn't have that project on their to-do list while they were doing the meeting notes. Like imagine if everybody were like they took handwritten meeting notes and they felt like it was the kind of like most joyous part of their job.
Yeah.
Jump shows up, then there's no project on there to do. There's no force, there's no potential energy there. They look at Jump and they're like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah. This one jumps interesting in part because it is the hope for the future of golf courses, which have been, on. I like that we just like jump straight into the financial planners are trying to they're trying to get 9 holes before nighttime, so we gotta help them get there. But jump's interesting because I think it makes me wrestle with like, okay, is this a pain point or is this demand itself, and how do we distinguish between the two? um Ro- Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah,
Jump in.
let's jump. Yeah, so pain points. So this is where we get into what pull is not. So we have to think of it in terms of these forces. There are like for some reason, we are in this deep intellectual and cultural malaise right now as a world. And the center of this is the phrase pain points. It is the stupidest concept that we're all just satisfied with it because, everyone has said it up until now, so it must be true. And so what you'll often hear people say when they hear about polo, they'll say, well, isn't that just problems and pain points? And
Yeah.
it's until you understand that problems and pain points and pull are different things, you will hit your head against the wall repeatedly and not understand why. The so We have many problems in our lives. We have, yeah, go ahead.
For our listener who's on, if they're this time consuming on Spotify or YouTube, they can see the video. If they're on Apple or they're just listening to audio, they won't be able to. But pull it. There's a Venn diagram. It's the simplest. It's the simplest diagram you've ever created. It's literally, I'm sharing my screen right now. It's literally just two ovals that have a like a smidget, like a very small amount of overlap, and one of the circles is problems, and one of which could also be pain points, and then the other one is stuff we take action on, which is the I think this is a helpful reminder for me that like just problems are almost always like 90% of what you've got here is not overlap, almost always a red herring, and that is the wrong thing to be looking for.
Yeah, so let's do this in the case of Jump. So you could describe Jump like the situation a financial advisor was in, where they have this thing on their mental to-do list of like, I don't want to be doing these meeting notes, but I don't have good options to automate them. You could describe that as a problem. And you could describe the feeling in the moment as a pain point. You could. It's a totally plausible description. But the problem is that you could also describe a million other things as problems and pain points that they're not going to do jack shit about.
Definitely not going to pay for.
Definitely not going to pay for. They're not shrunk.
Yeah.
There's not.
Yeah.
We care about when there is force behind these things. We don't care about things that are labeled as problems or pain points.
Yeah. What? So in hope it's hope it's okay if we're going. But Parker, if you're unfortunate enough to be watching this, sorry if we're like butchering anything in your business. But so in this case, what would be an indicator that this is a problem that they are going to take, that if there's a solution, they're going to rip it out of your hands. They're going to
Yes.
take action against it.
Beautiful question. This is so Parker actually wrote an article like a year or whatever ago on this that we like about how he figured this out. The only way to figure this out is by selling. That's the only way. Because only when you show that there is a viable alternative to this thing that we think there is pull and see how they behave, can we know if the pull is real or not, or if it just is something that they'll talk about that makes logical sense, but there's no force behind it. It's the only way. And so we should probably at some point link to that post, but his basic take was, hey, I spent like a year and a half doing a bunch of interviews and design partnerships, and nothing worked until I tried to sell. And it was because of this. We can only tell if it's real when we put an option in front of them. And it doesn't have to be real. It can still be a concept. It can be a service. It can be something that's minimum viable. It doesn't matter. But a viable, fitting thing to the pull we think they have. And see if it is real or not. And it's like, we're not trying to convince them of anything. We're trying to observe how they behave in that situation to know if there really is this blocked force.
Yeah. Super, super interesting. Like the force is there, and I guess the list of options that they would have been considering is mostly like just DIY. Or
there were dictation services.
Yeah.
There were even generic AI note takers that some people were using, but they weren't a fit. They weren't a perfect fit for what they were trying to accomplish, for compliance and integration reasons and all these other things. They were trying to, and that's a good signal, right? They're trying to use something, but like that's not necessarily the clearest. That is not a pure signal that it is true. The only signal that actually matters, that is actually real, is if they try to pull the option you put in front of them.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Let's keep moving. So we talked about what demand is not. It is not problems. It is not pain points. Get rid of those as much as you can. Get rid of those phrases or words from your vocabulary. The other thing it is not is desire for supply, which this one connects. There's a direct line to how we started the conversation about nobody cares about your product. But let me read a little bit from or a paragraph, and then we'll get
Okay.
your take on it, Rob. Um, Desire for supply. The paradox only makes sense when you realize that demand is not desire for a product. To understand this, we have to separate demand and supply. Supply is what we build. Demand is what a person is trying to achieve in their life. Demand is supply agnostic, and demand being supply agnostic as a concept is helpful for me because I can imagine a world where it's like I don't exist and the demand persists.
Yes.
And yeah, go ahead. Say more, Rob.
Yeah, that's the core thing here. If you think that demand is desire for a product or willingness to pay for a product, it is not an independent concept. It is a dependent concept. If it is a dependent concept, then you can't explain new products. You just can't. Like, there was no demand by that definition for a car. There was no demand by that definition for a mobile phone. Like, anything that is new, there is no demand for it by definition if demand is desire for a product.
Yeah.
You have to see demand as a separate thing that is not about products. It is about progress that people are trying to make in their lives. This is Bob Moesta's like classic jobs to be done quote, right? It's about the progress people are trying to make in their lives. Supply is it's what they use to make progress in their lives. The progress they're trying to make in their lives is a totally independent concept from the products they use, and they just pick the thing that fits best.
That fits, that's available, that they're aware of, like
Yes.
everything that goes into everything that goes into supply, which has expanded how I think about what supply is beyond just a product. Um, thoughts on supply, Rob, for um, ways that we can make it real, either with your business or mine or founder that you're working with, or desire for supply. What is it actually here? How about this? What does it look like when you go into a call misunderstanding this and believing that demand or looking for desire for supply versus looking for demand?
Yeah, there's a good point. It's super confusing when you're in a call looking for desire for supply. So in your case, right? If you're going in and saying, "So, have you ever wanted Spanish language podcasts for families?"
We're bilingual now, Rob. So yeah,
By
give
the
me.
hey, even shinier, right? It's just like, hey, I got some bilingual family podcasts that reach a big
Yeah,
audience.
yeah,
What's going to be on their minds is like, I have never wanted I like that's just not a
yeah,
thing that I have considered wanting.
yeah,
And that puts the conversation on the supply side about what you offer.
yeah,
And then you're in a state of having to convince them that podcasts are good,
yeah,
that like all these things that they should want.
yeah.
It's just the totally wrong conversation to have, where the right conversation is like about who are they trying to reach with their message? What are the methods? Like, what are they trying to accomplish with reaching new audiences with da 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 da? And what are the methods they have tried and what have they liked and disliked? And oh, by the way, because you're trying to reach young families and you've exhausted traditional channels, maybe a way to reach families that is outside of traditional channels could
hmm
be a good fit for you. And therefore, there is something called podcasts for this, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's how we separate demand and supply. They were always trying to reach families and they were always blocked by their current options, such that you fit, but they never wanted a podcast.
Yeah. That's um one I always feel a little bit silly talking about this. It's like I'm a grown dude who produces children's podcasts and who like is like massively just obsessed with family media. But yeah, exactly what you just said. For a long time before, I think while your concepts were still developing, and I was like, nobody wants this, which was true. like
Yes, it was
like
always
nobody
true.
nobody wants this. And if you want to find something that people can move on in their life and be happy without, children's like participating in children's programming is like super high on that list. However, what like the flip of, okay, if we position this as you are jockeying for attention of parents in a trusted environment that's super competitive, and your ability to stand out in like long form programming, like that's a real job that human beings, like that large, very large organizations with are trying to accomplish and struggling with. And there's like the potential for, not every organization has it, not every organization or human being thinks about it the same way, but it exists. Like that's real demand.
Yeah, and let's get to that in a second on ICP and
Yeah,
sales
perfect.
process there.
Yeah,
But do we want to jump through the situation? We can skip the situation, the shape for supply if we want, or what do you think?
yeah. um the next thing I wanted to hit was what causes pull, and I'm
Yeah,
realizing you're probably moving us forward because we got like 12 minutes.
yeah,
I made a mental note to hit this with jump. So you've got a really cool graphic in here, but basically I'm going to read from you and then let's talk about it. Basically, a person's situation shapes their to-do list. While many people could be prioritizing a project right now, we want to focus on the situations that make it weird for someone not to be prioritizing a specific project right now. And we're combining a couple of your concepts. It would be weird if there's outbound here. There's a bunch of really, really practical things to take away from this. So, Rob, what would you add about what, things that cause pull, maybe common mistakes or yeah, your color.
yeah. I think like the common mistake is thinking about pull as when you think about pull as a project on somebody's to-do list, you don't realize that most of the time it's on their backlog. It is not their number one priority. And so if you reach out to somebody who has a project on their backlog, you're going to have a nice conversation with them, and you're going to
Yeah,
leave confused, and you're going to feel like you need to push. And
yeah,
so we have to understand, right? And then you might find that 1 in 10 people, like, they're like, oh well, it's on my backlog, but you're in front of me now, so why not? Right?
yeah.
And so, like, it's gonna feel like slow progress
Mm,
if you approach it that way. And so we have to say, okay, cool. If I actually want to grow fast, I need to focus on the people who have this project as their priority right now. And we can define that in a way where it's like, okay, what's the situation where somebody would be weird not to be prioritizing this right now?
mm,
And and so we think about, like, the way I think about pull is like there is a situation that is forcing a project from the backlog onto the number one priority on somebody's to-do list.
mm.
If I find a person in that situation, that's when they are struggling, they're actively struggling, trying to make something happen and blocked, versus just kind of like, okay, cool. I'm just going to ignore that for now. I have other fish to fry, which is like the kind of default state. And so we
Mm-hmm.
have to focus. Like, I mean, we don't have to, you do whatever you want. But if you want to grow fast, you want to find people who rip the product out of your hands, and it's defined around a situation that forces a project onto somebody's priority list. Like, for example, hey, in your case, we just spent a lot of money on a traditional media buy and didn't really see the numbers move the way we needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in that situation, I'm going to be very open to hearing about alternative sources.
I think it's, in my case. So what we uh, the 2 second like version of this is we produce children's programs that are listened to by children with their parents. I actually I my pull hypothesis now is that like a marketing agency needs to be able to pitch unique
Yeah.
options to and to differentiate what they offer, because marketing is like marketing agencies are super competitive. There's low barriers to entry. Like there's a lot of competition. And so if we can help them stand out in their pitches to their clients, I think that's a more viable, like a stronger pull than metrics aren't working. Because that's, I would describe that as, with most marketing organizations I've talked with, a pain point. That's, but
Yes.
not something that they are like directly accountable for trying to solve immediately. That's like
Yeah.
their number one priority.
Yeah.
I don't know. Rob, tell me I'm wrong about that. Fix my business right now.
Now let's keep rolling. I want to talk
um,
about how pull defines the shape for supply, and then the concepts underneath this.
okay. Why don't you jump into the pull defines shape for supply?
So this is a very important thing to understand, which is that when so if you just talk about like problems and pain points, what you wind up with is a shape of a problem, and then you have to find a shape of a solution. That is not and the translation between those two is like wildly like difficult and complicated.
Mm,
And so you often get the problem wrong, and then you get the solution, and so that just doesn't work. And so what I found is that actually the unique thing about pull is that it defines the shape of supply that fits. It gives a rough outline of what it needs to be. If somebody is trying to accomplish something, but their existing options are blocking them for X reason,
mm-hmm.
supply just needs to be something that helps them accomplish that thing and gets around X reason. Like that's the highest level shape of the solution to build. And so I think that's a really, really powerful because in a sales call, you often want to just like start describing the teleology of your product, right? Or
Yeah.
some nonsense about your product instead of and saying, here's the reason we built it. Here's our theory behind it. It's like none of that matters. What
Yeah.
matters is that it's a thing that can help you accomplish that without that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it simplifies everything. Like the way all your conversations get way shorter. The way you talk about your product gets much smaller, which is the like surprising thing, because the project is defined, it's limited, and like it removes all the unnecessary things that confuse the customer that aren't directly related to what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I think of it as like pull defines a shape. That's the shape of what they're expecting. You can just fit that shape.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
if you offer anything that doesn't fit the shape, it is adding wind resistance, and it's confusing.
Yeah. I love that. Let's jump into ICP. You've got the bullseye in this. Can I pull up the bullseye, or is there something
You
you want to add before the bullseye?
pull up the bullseye.
I love the bullseye. And yeah, as I was reading this yesterday, I was like, yeah, I just had a conversation with a could buy who might actually, that might buy, but it's not the ICP. And I think you just hinted at, there's a difference between somebody who might purchase
Yes.
or who even sometimes does purchase, like, versus somebody that rips the product out of your hand. And I like how clearly you articulate the difference between the two of those. Rob, can you go deeper into it?
Yeah, this is something that is like that a lot of people actually have a lot of problems with this part of the theory, which is that like if you just think about your ICP in a traditional sense, your ideal customer profile in a traditional sense, you're basically going to be targeting somebody who has a 20 to 30% close rate. And that's like considered pretty decent. But that's the wrong way to think about it, right? Like when you find people who actually have pull, they have roughly 100% close rate with very fast sales cycles, and they're generally very happy post sale. And what we're doing is by misdefining our ICP based on random characteristics of who we would like to sell to, we are
Yeah.
blending people who have a 100% close rate and people who have a 5% close rate or a 10% close rate. And we are defining our entire sales process, our product, and everything downstream of the fact that we have mixed people who have real pull with people who haven't really prioritized this exact project on their to-do list And because of that, we have to push and we have to add all these sales tactics. And it's just like the ICP definition based on pull is a way to never have to sell again.
Yeah. Um, let's talk about how to find the ICP, but the way that I feel like the risk is mistaking a could buy,
Yes.
which is kind of like a wishful thinking. Like, I wish this person would see the value in this, or
They
like if
may
you,
even see the value. They may even say, yeah,
mm,
this is great, right? Which will often happen with people who are outside the bullseyes. You'll have good conversations with them that don't
yeah,
convert.
yeah, yeah, or or they do convert, which is actually like kind of a bad outcome in this
Yeah,
case
it's
because
like
you
a slot
mistake
machine.
them.
It's a slot machine conversion,
Yeah,
right? It's like every once in a while we can close these people, and
yeah,
so right, like, yeah, that's not we to grow very fast. You have to find people who pull, pushing, and kind of like some kind of hope that they close is a way to build a highly inefficient growth engine, go to market organization, and it's a way to build a bloated product.
yeah, yeah. Rob, what do you say to people that's like, all right, 100% win rate is not attainable. Rob is in like fairy dust land. You know, what do we do like in the real world? We've talked about great founders who are at 50% close rates. Is that a problem with outbound? Like, what do you say to that like question?
Yeah, so I'd say 100% close rate is the target from when somebody fits pull.
Mm,
You might be talking to somebody who doesn't fit pull, in which case it would be weird if they bought, in which case you shouldn't include them in your messaging and you shouldn't keep pushing. Right. And so, or you can just kind of like YOLO it and see what happens. But, um, but yeah, like I just think we have too low of a bar and we have too, we're just complacent with like a 20% close rate. And that leads to all sorts of downstream consequences and leads, I don't know, back to the cultural malaise point. We are at a low point in human civilization, and so I could go off on that for a while, but we'll leave
we've
it
gone
there.
full circle. Now the listener knows what the coming rage post is going to be related to the recent university visit. Rob, we're running up against time. We didn't get through everything. We got through a chunk of it. So
Yeah.
hopefully that but I highly recommend pull up we'll link to the newsletter in the show notes. Read it, go through it, think just at least I promised. 100% promise. At least one of the diagrams, at least one of the concepts will make you rethink what you're currently doing in sales, what your outbound looks like, how you talk about supply, confusing demand and supply, whatever it might be. Rob, any other last thoughts before
Yeah.
closing?
So at the end of the post, I talk about where the theory is currently blocked, where I am currently not sure. I would like anybody who reads or listens listens this far to help me there. I
Mm,
am missing something, and it is about of the infinite potential pull permutations. How do you select? How do you even think about that? And so, um, I have read I've read basically everything in business on like positioning and stuff like that. That's not sufficient. I need something that can help in this very abstractly defined task.
I love it. All right. I'll give that some thought and then be completely unhelpful to you, Rob,
Great.
I'm sure. And if anybody, y'all get to watch Rob do, lobotomies basically on me and how I think about pull. If you want to work with Rob, we'll have the links in the notes. He works with founders. It's booking out through the start of 2026, and so his calendar fills up fast. If you'd like to work with Rob, reach out, fill out an application.
Cool.
Anyways,
Gotta rock.
Rob. All right. See ya.
Later.